Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for January 10, 2023, the James Bond edition. And we begin with our lead story from BusinessInsider that the CEO of the South African energy giant Eskom was poisoned with cyanide in his office as he drank coffee in Johannesburg on December 13th. It gets even stranger because the day before, he had submitted his resignation to Eskom's chairman, yet this was not public knowledge. That news became public on December 14th. So somebody really wanted to get rid of this guy, whether it had to do with ABB or not. I'll leave that speculation to yourself. But James Bond and the world of cyanide laced coffee given to business executives. Not a good sign. Certainly not in South Africa. Next up, from the Financial Times, German prosecutors are assessing a possible corruption probe into the finance minister. They're assessing whether to open a corruption investigation over allegations of a conflict of interest concerning a private bank that provided his mortgage. Last May, the finance minister, Christian Lindner, addressed the 100th anniversary celebrations for BB Bank, a retail bank, but did not disclose he had received a home loan from the same institution. He took out an additional loan after the May video address. Sounds like a conflict of interest to me. Next up, and a very troubling story, the police handcuffed and detained a Wall Street Journal reporter who was outside a bank asking some questions. The police department has opened a, quote, administrative investigation, end quote, after receiving a letter from the editor-in-chief of the Journal, which expressed concerns about the interaction of the police and the reporter. The bank, and we should also mention, of course, the reporter's black. The bank complained that a suspicious person was outside the bank asking questions. And what do the Phoenix police immediately do? Well, they go slap handcuffs on him and throw him in a car. And our final story is one that's been going around for some time, and that's the ex-CEO of McDonald's, Steve Easterbrook, who was fired over having an improper consensual relationship. And it turned out he lied to investigators because he'd had several improper relationships throughout his tenure at McDonald's. He had to give back $105 million in compensation, and now the SEC has fined him for lying to investors. Just goes to show you need to call Candace Towell at Infotowel because bad-hearted executives lead to bad results. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.